You're listening to the prophecy of fire, a place where souls are told through the voice of flame, of truth, and of the heart. Sometimes the universe sends us souls that weren't born to be loved easily, but to move everything they touch. They walk into a room and the air changes, not because they try to shine, but because they are the light itself. Yet when the light burns too brightly, people squint, and that's when misunderstanding begins. Tonight, let's slow down, just a little, not to judge but to listen, not to look at others but to see ourselves. In a soul once feared only because it dared to live honestly with its own fire, and when your heart grows still enough, we'll step quietly into that story where light and misunderstanding meet, and truth begins to unfold. Aries steps into the world like a spark flaring in the dark, not loud, yet impossible to ignore. There's something in their eyes, a light both radiant and unsettling, the pulse of life itself moving through human form. Some call it courage, others call it recklessness. But for Aries, it's simply breathing. It's how they exist. From the moment they arrive, the air shifts, not because they seek control, but because their soul vibrates with movement, with beginnings, with the rhythm of life itself. Where others search for safety, they seek truth. Where many choose silence, they speak. Where most wait, they act. And that unsettles people. The world loves comfort, soft edges, quiet order. But Aries, they are the wind that blows the dust off routine. They don't come to please, they come to awaken. Every step they take whispers a reminder. Life doesn't wait for anyone. You may not understand Aries. Yet in a moment of courage, when you dare to speak what you truly feel, when you take one fearless step toward your truth, a part of you becomes them. People don't fear Aries because they are fierce. They fear them because their light exposes what others hide. They hold up a mirror, showing us the times we stayed quiet just to stay safe, stepped back just to be loved, dimmed our own fire just to fit in. Aries refuses to let that happen. Their light reminds us of who we once were, dreamers, believers, souls that burned for something real. To many, Aries feels like a mirror, not a gentle one, but the mirror of truth. When you look at them, you don't just see them, you see yourself. The parts that fell asleep, the dreams buried under fear. Maybe that's why people find them hard to love. No one likes to be reminded that they've been living halfway. Yet those who are brave enough to look deeper see it clearly. Aries never wanted to be above anyone. They just want to live fully. Their fire doesn't burn people, it burns away illusion. And in the ashes of that truth, real flowers sometimes bloom. If you've ever met an Aries, maybe you felt tired, overwhelmed, maybe you thought they were too much. But think again. Maybe they made you remember how it feels to be alive, to be honest, to be raw, to exist without apology. They don't teach through words, they teach by being. And someday, when life slows down and the noise fades, you might hear a small whisper inside you. Remember the first flame. That's the part of you they woke up, the part that never stopped believing in life's wild beauty. The world will always need souls like that, the ones who dare to live truthfully while everyone else hides behind masks. They remind us that freedom isn't about control. It's about allowing yourself to be utterly, fearlessly real. Maybe you feared Aries, but that fear is only the veil over a deeper truth that somewhere inside you too there's a spark just like theirs. And when that spark is seen, named, and embraced, it returns warmer, gentler, wiser, like dawn, quiet yet filled with power. Every night ends, and when that light slips through the cracks of your walls, you'll understand. Aries didn't come to be loved. They came to remind us that life itself is a fire waiting to be lit. But even that light, strong, honest, unyielding, is often misunderstood. Because the world still fears what refuses to bow, what dares to speak the truth. And maybe that's where the journey of understanding Aries truly begins, not with their fire, but with their words, words of truth, words that may wound, yet somehow also save. Because sometimes what we fear isn't the fire itself, but the light that it brings. Some souls are born to soothe the world, and others are born to stir it. Those who carry the fire of truth belong to the latter. They don't speak to be loved, they speak because silence to them feels like betrayal. In their voice, in their gaze, there's something raw, a light untouched by fear or politeness. When they speak, the world often falls silent. Not because people agree, but because somewhere in their words, there's a shard of truth we've all been running from. They are mirrors reflecting what we'd rather not see, and that's why they're misunderstood. People call them harsh, cold, tactless, but honesty for them is just another form of compassion. A love that doesn't soothe, but awakens. They know truth burns like fire, it hurts, yes, but in the end it purifies. Those who have heard their unfiltered words may feel torn apart at first, but it's through those cracks that light finally enters. They don't shelter others with comforting lies, because they know too well that false comfort weakens the soul. In today's world, where politeness so often hides the truth, the ones who dare to speak it are left standing alone. But think about it. How many times have we hurt ourselves by staying silent? How many times have we smiled when we wanted to say, "I don't agree"? How many times have we betrayed our truth just to keep the peace? That they cannot do. They believe that silence in the face of falsehood is self-betrayal, so they speak even when it costs them belonging. Maybe that's why, to many, they seem too severe. But if you look deeper, you'll see it. Beneath the firmness lies a rare tenderness, the kindness of someone willing to be disliked, just to protect what's real. They take on the hardest role in this world, to be the truth teller in an age addicted to pretending. At night, they too feel lonely, because truth, no matter how sacred, always comes with a price. To carry it is to carry a wound. For every time they speak, they touch the edges of others' comfort and shake what was meant to stay hidden. But even in that loneliness, they cannot stay silent. To them, silence feels like betrayal, not peace. And yet those who truly listen to them, beyond the sting, beyond the pride, will find a gift hidden in their words, a painful truth that wakes the soul after years of false calm. That's what makes them sacred. They don't just speak truth, they live it. Every gesture, every step, every glance carries the weight of clarity. People think they love to argue, but they're not fighting to win, they're guarding the beauty of truth, like someone holding a lantern in the storm. And when we finally grow still enough to hear them, we understand. What they seek isn't victory, it's purity of heart. Because some wounds in life can only be healed by truth. A real conversation, a word that dares to touch pain, can rescue a lost soul. Pretending may look safe, but it slowly kills what's alive inside us. Truth, no matter how hard, always leads us home. So when a soul like that walks through your life, they leave more than just scars. They leave doors to freedom, to awareness, to truth unafraid of itself. And one day when you've grown enough to understand, you'll realize their blunt words were never meant to hurt you, but to awaken the part of you that had fallen asleep. In this long night of pretending, their light still stands, steady, unhidden, born from a courage that never disguises itself. And in that light, the world grows quieter. Your heart opens a little wider, and you understand something simple. Not everyone has the courage to live that honestly. Where truth is lit, a new chapter begins. No longer just the fire of words, but the fire of self, of the armor one wears to protect a tender soul. And so the journey deepens into the sacred paradox of the heart that fears and still dares to burn bright. Some hearts grow up in storms, not because they choose to, but because that's the only way they know how to survive. When the world keeps crashing into a sensitive soul, it learns to build walls not to shut people out, but simply to breathe. On the outside, they seem strong, even proud, strong enough to make others step back. But inside is a heart trembling with the fear of being forgotten. What the world calls ego is really just armor, forged from every wound of being misunderstood, rejected, or judged. Each you're too much. Each you should tone it down. Each just be quiet for once. Slices like a small knife. And over the years, they sew those wounds shut with threads of self-belief, self-defense, and a fierce decision. Never again will I let anyone touch the fragile parts of me. On the surface, it looks like they don't need anyone, but that's only an illusion. Inside, they ache to be seen, to be heard, to be loved without shrinking themselves to fit. They don't crave superiority, they just fear disappearing. Their ego isn't a fire of arrogance. It's a lantern burning through the night, whispering, "I'm still here." It's easy to look at a strong person and think they don't feel pain, but if you grow quiet enough, you'll hear it, the heartbeat beneath the armor, soft, steady, and kind. They don't want to hurt anyone, they just don't want to be hurt again. And sometimes their way of protecting themselves builds the very distance they long to close. They walk tall, yet their shoulders carry the invisible weight of battles no one else can see. This world isn't gentle with honesty. Those who shine too brightly, speak too directly, live too vividly, they overwhelm others. So they learn to create a version of themselves that people can handle, less impulsive, less intense, less them. And with every compromise, a piece of their light retreats into the dark, until all the world can see is the armor, not the soul beneath it. Ego, in its truest form, is not the enemy. It's the loyal gatekeeper of the child who was once hurt. That child still lives inside every adult. Only now, it's learned to hide. It no longer cries out loud. It hides behind sharp words, steady eyes, and a proud smile. But if someone is patient enough, gentle enough, they'll see it, that child still waiting to be held, to hear someone whisper, "I remember you." Those who carry great fire have also known deep loneliness, because when you're the first to move, you're also the first to be struck. They've learned to endure, to rise, to smile even when their scars are still bleeding. And somewhere along the way, they start to believe that without armor, they wouldn't survive. But one day, they realize that armor is heavier than they thought. It doesn't just block the pain, it blocks the joy too. Everything becomes quiet, safe, but empty, because nothing can truly touch the heart when it's wrapped in steel. Then in a single moment, maybe in a gentle look, a hand that lingers, or a word that feels real, the armor cracks. Light slips through. And suddenly they understand. They don't have to be strong all the time. Existence doesn't need to be proven through victory, but through the ability to still love even after breaking. Maybe that's a journey we all take, learning when to wear the armor and when to take it off so the heart can breathe again. Because ego, when listened to, is no longer a cage. It becomes a bridge between fear and faith. And when we're brave enough to look inside that steel shell, we no longer see a warrior hardened by life, but a soul longing to be understood. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the next chapter begins, where the fire stops fighting the world and starts listening to itself, a sacred journey, where even chaos begins to feel divine and every impulse carries the quiet message of life still burning within. Life never waits for anyone. It moves like a river, never looking back, never asking for permission. And while most people still stand on the shore, watching the current with hesitation, there are souls who leap in, not to prove anything, but simply to feel, to touch, to become one with the pulse of life itself. They act not out of pride, but because they cannot bear the stillness of fear. They don't calculate, they trust. They trust the call of their hearts, the timing of the moment, the whisper that says, if you step forward, the path will appear. The world calls them impulsive, but sometimes what we call reckless is really the purest language of faith. While others hesitate, they move. While others need a reason, they follow a heartbeat. It isn't impatience, it's surrender to the current of the universe. They live as if every moment were their last chance to touch a miracle. If you've ever seen them in those moments, eyes burning with life, hands trembling but still reaching forward, you'd understand. They don't act because they are foolish. They act because they're afraid of missing life itself. They know waiting too long is another form of dying, so they choose to live, even if it means falling. Their impulsiveness is a kind of prayer. It's the soul's way of saying to God, I trust this path even if I can't see where it leads. In a world obsessed with plans and logic, these souls dance with the flames of intuition. They don't know how it will end, they just know they must begin. Because for them, life only truly starts when you dare to take that first step. Of course, they fail. Many times. They fall, they burn, they shatter in their own fire. But strangely, every fall makes them rise stronger. They don't see failure as a wound, but as proof that they tried. While others have perfect blueprints, they have real scars. And sometimes those scars shine brightest in the dark. The world may never understand them. The world loves safety, loves maps, loves certainty. But these souls choose the untamed roads, the ones no one has walked before. They know the risks and they smile anyway, because they understand. No path can truly belong to you unless it's carved by your own steps. Deep inside, their impulsiveness isn't a rebellion of reason, it's the heartbeat of faith that never died. They can hear the rhythm of the universe, the hum of something unseen, and they go, even when others stay still. The world needs people like that, not to teach recklessness, but to remind us that nothing great is ever born from fear. Every change, every dream, every life worth living begins with a single step taken without a map. Think about the times you've leapt, when you walked away from a place that no longer fit, when you spoke your truth knowing it might cost you something, when you started over at an age the world said was too late. Remember how your heart raced, how fear and excitement became one. In that instant, you were alive. That's the sacred fire, the force that drives us out of the shadow of comfort and into the light of our own becoming. Impulsiveness is not a flaw. It's how the soul proves it still believes in miracles. And hidden inside every bold move is a quiet faith, the knowing that everything happens with purpose. Strangely, those who dare to act are often the ones who fear the most. They fear not living fully. They fear missing the chance the universe placed in their hands. But between fear and faith, they choose faith. And that is the most beautiful courage a human being can have. One day they stop, they breathe. They look back at the paths behind them, some burnt, some blooming, but all of them real. And in that truth they smile, because every mistake, every reckless leap was proof that they truly lived. And when their fire finally settles, when the dust of action drifts quietly to the ground, we see it beneath all that intensity, a heart unbelievably tender, a heart that's been hurt more than we know, yet still chooses to trust, to love, to begin again from the ashes of its own flame, a heart that never wanted to conquer the world, only to find peace within the fire of its own being. Not everyone who wears armor wants to fight. Some souls wear it simply because they've been wounded too many times. On the outside, you see strength, steady, fearless, unshaken. But if you grow quiet enough to look deeper, you'll see a weary heart, trying not to fall apart. People call it courage, call it pride, but those who have lived it know it's simply how the heart learns to survive. Behind the confident gaze and the decisive steps lies a tenderness few are ever allowed to touch. That heart loves deeply, endlessly. When it loves, it believes, it gives, it surrenders its soul. No halfway feelings, no calculations. It loves as if it's the last time it will ever be allowed to love. And because it loves that deeply, it also breaks that deeply. When hurt, they don't blame, they don't cry out. They go silent, but that silence isn't indifference, it's mercy. A gentle escape, not to run from love, but to keep others from seeing their weakness, to keep from wounding anyone else with words born from pain. That silence becomes both their dignity and their healing. They stitch their wounds with the threads of faith still left and hold on to the beautiful memories instead of the bitterness. The world sees them as cold, but only hearts that have burned completely understand the weight of ashes. When they go quiet, it's not because they've stopped caring. It's because they're gathering the pieces of their soul, trying to love again, even knowing it might hurt again. Deep inside, they never want to leave. They just want to be understood. They don't need rescuing, only an honest gaze that says, "I'm here, and I'm not afraid of your fire." But few can say that, so they walk away not because the love is gone, but because staying would mean losing themselves. Leaving is how they protect what's still pure. Those who carry fire also carry tears. They cry where no one can see and smile when the world is watching. They may not speak their sadness, but their silence holds the weight of souls who dared to love, to trust, to give everything. They never regret loving, they only mourn that the world still doesn't know how to love hearts like theirs, fierce yet sincere, direct yet gentle. Maybe that's why they live with a quiet loneliness. They stand among crowds, still radiant, still alive, but their eyes hold something untouchable, like a flame bent by the wind, still burning, but one breath away from fading. And so they become their own keeper of the fire. True strength isn't in never falling. It's in opening again after every fall. It's the courage to keep loving when love has already burned you. It's believing that love is still worth it. That heart, though it has turned to ashes many times, always finds a way to rise again. Because the real flame inside them never dies. It only transforms, from passion into wisdom, from desire into compassion. When they close a chapter, they don't slam the door with anger. They place a hand on their heart, whisper thank you, and walk forward carrying the light of peace. And in that quiet moment, when they no longer have to be strong, They return to who they truly are, a pure soul, a gentle flame that no longer burns to destroy, but to illuminate. And when you finally see that, you understand where their strength truly comes from. They've been broken and still chose to love. They've been disappointed and still chose to believe. Their power isn't in conquest, but in their softness after the storm. And then as their fire softens, as the heart stops bleeding, you notice something miraculous. From the ashes, a new light is born. Warm, clear, and quiet, like the voice of the universe whispering, "Look closer, behind every pain there's a gift." A sacred paradox, where fire can burn and heal, and that journey is just beginning. Fire is a living being. It breathes, it remembers. It has a heart of its own. When loved, it warms and illuminates. When suppressed, it panics, flaring out of control, burning even what was once built with love. That is the sacred paradox every fiery soul must learn. The flame within us can be a miracle or a storm. Along their path, they often forget how fragile that balance is. It takes only a drop of disappointment, a single betrayal, a careless word, and their inner fire shifts direction. From light, it turns to ash. From warmth to fury. They begin to fight themselves, torn between the instinct to protect and the fear of being hurt again. And slowly they realize the real enemy was never outside, it was within. When they lose their way, the fire can turn against them. They burn with anger at the world, at injustice, at themselves. They want to run, but where do you run when the fire lives inside you? When it burns through your every breath? Sometimes they collapse, staring into the mirror, unsure who they've become. That is the moment of darkness when fire becomes punishment. But then comes a quieter moment after the tears fall, after the silence deepens. They begin to hear something soft, the voice of the fire itself. It doesn't scream. It doesn't rage. It whispers, "I was never your enemy. I just needed to be guided." And that's the moment of awakening, when they stop trying to extinguish the flame and begin to listen to it, talk to it, honor it. The fire changes shape. What once destroyed now begins to guide. It stops exploding and starts shining. Those who were once consumed by their own chaos become the torchbearers for others, because they know too well what it feels like to be burned by their own flame, so they use that same fire to warm the cold hearts around them. They discover that true power isn't about suppressing fire, but understanding it, accepting it, and letting it serve something higher: love, purpose, clarity. Every soul who carries this fire is a living forge. Their life is not a constant blaze, but a continuous refining. Every burst of anger, every weakness, every fall is a hammer striking the soul, shaping its strength. And if you've ever seen them in those moments, you'd see something beautiful. The harder the test, the brighter they shine. The day they stop fighting themselves is the day they become free. No longer a fire that destroys, but a flame that heals. Their voice now carries warmth. Their touch, quiet reassurance. They no longer need to prove their light, because they know true light never shouts. This world is full of people afraid of fire, afraid of passion, anger, feeling too much. But for them, fire is no longer something to fear. It's a companion. They've learned to look into it as one looks into their own heart, radiant, fierce, but profoundly fragile. They know that fire rises to defend what is sacred and softens when it's time to nurture. That's the art of awakened living. Eventually, they understand. No darkness lasts forever when you keep your light alive. Peace doesn't come from putting out the flame. It comes from understanding it. And from that wisdom, they become teachers of rebirth. They recognize the light in every other flame and help others find theirs again. At that point, their fire is no longer impulsive or controlling. It's pure creative energy. They no longer chase victory because they've won the only battle that matters, the one within. They no longer seek to set the world ablaze because they know when the light inside stays lit, the world around them naturally begins to glow. And in that still moment, as their light expands, their soul grows weightless like wind. They smile, unafraid of their own fire now, because they finally understand that very fire is life itself. It's the breath of the universe, the thread connecting them to what is divine. And when that inner light becomes pure, the next journey begins, no longer the lesson of fire, but the mission of light, a prophecy waiting to unfold, where their soul discovers the ultimate meaning of carrying the first sacred flame of humankind. Not every soul is born to soothe the world. Some arrive to stir it, to set light to the places where humanity has forgotten its inner flame. They carry a mission that is anything but easy: to awaken. People often mistake awakening for something gentle, peaceful, but truthfully, it is a quake of the soul. It's the moment when illusions burn away, when the layers of safety are stripped off, when a person finally stands face to face with their fear, their shadow, their truth. And that soul, the universe's first flame, is sent to ignite that very process. This fire does not come to be loved. It comes to illuminate, to shine light into the corners others refuse to face. When they walk into a space, the energy shifts. Everything feels more alive, more real, and sometimes more uncomfortable. But within that discomfort, something long asleep inside us begins to stir. They are not merely symbols of strength, they are embodiments of life itself. They dare to love, to fail, to burn. They dare to live without permission, to speak what others will not, to do what others only dream of. For them, living true is more important than being liked. They do not belong to the world of half measures. People call them too intense, too direct, too much. But if you listen closely, you'll understand the world shines brighter when they appear. Every step they take leaves a trace, sometimes a scar, sometimes a seed. They remind us that love isn't only softness, it's also the courage to confront, to take responsibility, to defend what's right. Their flame isn't just personal, it's collective. Every time they rise, the universe remembers that there are still souls brave enough to live fully. When they ache, the world learns courage. When they fall, the world learns resilience. When they rise again, the world learns faith. That is their spiritual purpose, not to save anyone, but to be living proof that salvation begins within. They don't teach through words, they teach through presence, through existing without apology, through walking on even when alone, through burning bright even when unseen. Maybe you've met one of them in your life, a friend unafraid to speak the truth, a lover unafraid to feel, or maybe you've been one of them in a moment when your own heart refused to be silent. This fire isn't limited to a zodiac sign. It's the symbol of the courageous part in each of us, the part that refuses to settle, the part that insists on living wholly. They are the universe's reminder that light doesn't need to be perfect to shine, that even in chaos there is divine order, that true strength is not in avoiding pain, but in walking through it to find the clear self beneath. And when a fiery soul reaches that understanding, they are no longer the reckless one, no longer the warrior, but the guide. The light they carry no longer burns outward, it awakens countless other lights. They become living proof that fire is not meant only to burn, but to heal. If you are one of those souls, if your flame was once dimmed, if you've ever been misunderstood for being too bold, too real, remember this: the universe never wastes light. Every wound you've carried, every fire you've endured, is part of a greater story, the story of helping the world remember that living truthfully is the most sacred gift of all. And perhaps you, with your brave heart, with your flame that never went out, are already doing what that ancient soul was born to do, awakening humanity through the simple, powerful act of being. Thank you for being here, for listening, for opening your heart. May your flame never be dimmed by fear.